are an organ donor and you unfortunately should pass away, a member of our staff will go out to the hospital, to the nursing home, wherever, and we will recover the cornea of your eye. Comes back to our office, our lab techs prepare it for corneal transplantation, which is the most common transplant in the world. They've been going on since the 1920s, believe it or not. I'll come back to that a little bit later, but the real reason I'm here is the issue of organ donation. And there is a group in the state known as the Sharing Network, and they are the central point of contact when someone passes away. They also go out and recover all your other organs regardless. But because the eye is so technically challenging, we are dedicated just to that. Just to give you an idea, our recovery techs go through about 4 to 5 months of training before they're allowed to go out in the field. Our lab techs require about 6 to 8 months of training before they can go out into the field. I would offer to you, if you'd ever like to come down to our offices, we're in Clark, we'd love to host a meeting of yours. And our lab techs love to show you what they do. We can take about 6 or 7 at a time, and they will show you the actual process of preparing the cornea for transplantation. Yeah, I know, some people, especially over breakfast, it just doesn't work. So I'm going to embarrass a few people maybe. Anybody here organ donors? I know a couple of you have shown me your licenses. If you're not, the material on the table can show you how to do it. Mm-hmm. You've heard a couple stories already about the value of it. In New Jersey, we recovered about 850 corneas last year. Wow. Of New Jersey residents, about 420 recipients received that corneal transplant. Anyone know anyone who's had a corneal transplant? That's odd.
Yeah. A young good friend of my son had degenerative conditions in his eyes, and he had both cornea.
It's very, very common. I will leave these for you. These are great little books. Any teachers in the room? Educators of any kind?
Oh, yeah.
Ex-educators.
This story, it's called The Blind Porcupine, was written by 2 8-year-olds who had a congenital birth defect which required that they have corneal transplants at about the age 8. They were twins. Ironically, at that time, they were able to find 4 corneas all at about the same time for both those children. So they wrote this little story. They did all the drawings. They did everything. It was never adult edited. So it's written the way an 8-year-old would say it. It is the cutest thing in the world. Obviously, it should have been Blind Porcupine, but they never changed it. They left it at the Blind Porcupine. But it's a great story about 2 little girls going through the process. And the one, oh, there it is. That is a picture of what they say they saw. The black part is where they could not see. So that's the only part of their eye that they could see out of just prior to their transplant. And they're 2 of the cutest things. I met them a couple months ago, and they're now 14 years old, and they're doing really well. I talked to the educators because my daughter is a 4th grade teacher, and she's constantly, Dad, I need more, I need more, I need more, so I'm shipping them down to her. Because it's written by an 8-year-old in the way an 8-year-old talks, it's great for low readers because they can fit into it. It's the way they talk, so they can read it. It's a lot easier. And back in December, over the Christmas holiday, one of the children in her class was killed in an automobile accident. The therapists in the school use the book to stimulate conversations about death and those kinds of issues, and that has proven to be very helpful. So it's a really neat little book. I will leave some. Anyone who wants some, please help yourself. Sorry. As I told you the numbers for New Jersey, but right here in Bergen County, 62 donors, 2015, people who passed away, and they allowed us to recover their eyes. 55 Bergen County residents received corneal tissues for transplants. So the numbers are real. The need is real. But I will tell you that right now, there are over 5,000 people sitting on a waiting list for a transplant. And it's estimated that roughly a half of them will die before they get their transplant.
Let me ask a question. I mean, you have 9 million New Jersey residents. I don't know what percentage of the population.
34% are organ donors.
Right, but I mean, it seems like a relatively small number of cornea that had been donated. Even if it's 34% of the population that dies, you think it'd be a much larger number. So where is the disconnect between those that pass away and our donors? I mean, do you capture 100% of those that are donors?
Well, yes and no. So let me back up and just cover one other point. If you're an organ donor, please make sure your family knows about it. Make sure they know that's what you want. Because in the state of New Jersey, your next of kin can overrule your license. You can sign all the wills and everything you want, that I want my organs donated, but your next of kin, if they disagree, can overrule it.
How is that possible?
State law.
We're in New Jersey.
State law. That's the way the law is. You're in New Jersey. What can I say?
Should you also register with the state?
Yeah, by checking off on your driver's license, that registers with you, with the state. If you're not currently an organ donor and you want to register, there are instructions on the material I left for you. You can go on the DMV website and you can register right online. The next time your driver's license is renewed, it will show up saying, I'm an organ donor.
Okay.
But even if it's not on your license right now and you register, we'll still pick that up when we go through the process of checking you out.
What's the youngest age that somebody can?
I'm sorry?
What's the youngest age that somebody can register for your children?
On their own, they 18. They would need parental permission
Prior to that.
under 18.
And is also that through the DRB?
Yes. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am.
What you said when like a lot of us can get organ. I used to work for hospice, and one of the things that happens is the family will go down, and then so they just take the body, so and
Right.
then nothing happens. Usually that's like what we do. Because I was a social worker there, so what I would do, I would ask them when I had it. So I would call the people to maybe move them out of the hospital,
Mhm.
but more than 50% of the time, it doesn't happen.
Right. And unfortunately, it's not a perfect system because you have hospitals involved, you have medical examiners involved, you have nursing homes, you have hospices. They don't all have access to all the information, and yes, sometimes, unfortunately, people do fall through the cracks, so to speak. We have 12 hours from the time of death to recover your eye. After that, it's not usable. So if somebody calls us after that 12-hour mark, we're in trouble. Not to mention the fact that it's kind of hard to get from Clark, New Jersey to the outer ends of the state within less than an hour and a half. So we have issues there. Yes, ma'am.
When you do receive an eye, how many of those are viable for use? What are the things?
We're running around 92% right now, that when we recover them, that they are usable. That does not mean that we're going to get a request for that particular cornea within the lifespan of that cornea, which is 14 days by US standards.
What do you mean request? Does it mean certain, how many corneas only fit certain people, or what?
Well, no, if a surgeon calls us and says, I need a tissue, but I need it to meet these specifications, if we don't have one that meets those specifications, we help him go to the other eye banks around the country to find it.
Is it that kind of spec though, or?
It can be, yes, depending on what the structure of the patient's eye and whatnot. There are a lot of variables.
No alcohol.
No, look. So when you get an old turkey like me, why would anybody want my eyes?
Okay.
Better to see than not to see.
Let's remember your biology and whatnot. The cornea is just that outer coating over your eye. It is not the part of your vision. That's the lens that's in the back. It is not the sclera, the white part of your eye. It is just that clear film that protects the pupil of the eye. So we can utilize people up to 95 years of age. We can utilize corneas from people who are blind. It doesn't make any difference because it's just that outer layer. So there's a lot of things that make it very possible for us to use corneas.
All right, so I was diagnosed with cataracts, and so they went in and they put an artificial lens in, whatever. Do I still have?
Yes.
Yes, you still have a cornea.
Yeah.
Because they use a laser,
Yeah.
they may have destroyed some of the cells in the corneal tissue, and that may preclude us from using it. But if you're an organ donor, we would still recover it, we would test it, we would see if it's usable, and if it is, we're okay.
Just a question to follow up on Bill. You mentioned before, I think, 5,000 who are on a list to receive. Now, how many of those are on that list because it's difficult to match versus not having the inventory?
Okay, when I said 5,000, I meant all organs, not just eyes. All organs, okay? Kidneys, heart, lungs, the whole 9 yards. And then you get into issues of matchability and those kinds of things. There's no waiting list for corneas. Doctors call, we can probably match them somewhere in the country. But again, we can only keep that cornea for 14 days. Eversight, New Jersey is one of 6 Eversight organizations in the country. There's one in Connecticut, one in Ohio, 2 in Michigan, and 1 in Illinois. And we are part of a common corporation. We also have an international unit. We just opened an eye bank in South Korea. We are opening one in Abu Dhabi, and in fact, our CEO is heading to China next week to negotiate the opening of one with them.
I'm sorry, just so I understand, it sounds like an incredibly substantial organization. How many people in total, and where is your funding coming from?
Okay. Most of our funding comes from fees for the corneal tissue. Right now, at a break-even point, we charge $3,200 per cornea. And in a bit, I'll tell you about, that's going to go up in a little bit, but there's a new technique out that we're getting ready to roll out. But that assumes that every patient can afford to make full payment. In 2014, we donated or gave a reduced fee, or we waived the entire fee for 14 individuals here in New Jersey to the tune of about $25,000 of lost revenue. In 2015, that number jumped to $50,000 and about 39 people. If we continue on the track we're on so far this year, we will exceed $65,000 and be looking at close to 45 people who we've had to do that for. We do that in conjunction with the surgeon and in conjunction with either the hospital or the surgical center where it's being performed. If they ask us for a reduction, we turn around and say, you're going to do the same thing, right? So it's not just all on us. Some of that's coming about due to changes in Medicare and Medicaid, 20% copays. deductibles, all that kind of stuff. A lot of people are saying, I don't have that kind of money to put up the 20% copay on like a $12,000 or $14,000 process. You know, they're talking almost $3,000, not necessarily something everybody has available. And I lost my train of thought where I was going with that one.
Expenses,
So,
costs going up.
yeah, oh, and I hope there are no insurance agents in the room. But insurance companies are now starting to talk to the industry about what's called bundling. And basically what they're talking about doing is saying to a surgeon, we're going to give you $8,000. Spread it out as you can. That's on you. But all we're giving is $8,000. That's got to cover you, the surgical center, and the cost of the cornea. The organization, such as ours, the eye bank, who can make it possible for that surgeon to do the surgery at that $8,000 level, they're the ones that are going to succeed in the world. We see this coming in the next 5 to 7 years as being the standard in the industry. So we're moving now to create an endowment fund, funding it now so that we have the resources 7 or 8 years from now to cover that demand for reduced cost. So more and more, this is going to become an industry that is going to survive on charitable donations to underwrite the cost of the corneal tissue. Back over the Christmas holidays, several doctors from New Jersey went down to Nimbia as part of a Doctors Without Borders program. And before they left, they said, look, we've been down there, we know we need about 20 corneas to do transplants on people or they're going to go blind. We were able to work with our international office and our main corporate office and provide them with the 20 corneas that they needed free of charge. We can't do that. We used to be a standalone organization. We could never do that as a standalone. But as part of this bigger network, we can all share in that cost. But you can do the math. That's roughly $70,000 worth of cornea tissue that we donated. And we hope to be able to do more and more of that. Part of my job, in addition to talking to you about becoming organ donors, is I also talk to people about becoming financial donors. I'm the chief fundraiser for the organization as well. So we do, out there, we are always looking for financial resources. Right now, all of our donations go into that charitable program and or into our long-term investments so that we can do what we need to do in 7 or 8 years to be able to accommodate that. I don't know how many of you remember, and this one's emotional, so I'm going to guilt you into it. Last summer, up in Lake Apatcon, a little 10-year-old boy fell off his father's boat and was killed. Okay. His name was Christopher. And I started with this organization in September. And about the second weekend in October, my boss says to me, by the way, you've got to go to this festival up in Sakasana. Okay, off I go. Well, it was a festival being done by this little boy's parents. They had donated all his organs. They basically said, take what you need. His eyes went, everything. His father had a rock and roll band. They were doing a rock and roll concert, and they were doing a fundraiser for his foundation that they created in his name called Kindness for Christopher. And they were giving this money to other people in the community who had medical needs to help them financially. But walking around, there's this little girl, and she's walking up to everybody. And she is the most gregarious person in the world. In fact, most of the politicians in this country should take a lesson from her on how to work a room. Because, boy, I'll tell you, nobody came around that place who didn't know her. But she walks up to me, and I'm like, okay, what's up? And she goes, see this? That's Christopher's. She had bone cancer. And it was isolated in this, I don't know the name of that bone, but in that part of her leg. Just so happened, Christopher's leg is the exact dimensions of her leg. They took that one out, put his in.
Wow.
She's walking around on it within 2 months. To me, if you're not an organ donor, go do it right now. 'Cause that's what it's all about. It really is. Moving down the line, for corneal transplant, right now recovery 4 to 6 months for your vision to really come back. Because you've probably never seen one, but when a cornea is implanted, there's about 9 or 10 stitches in it that you can see. And they get in the way, and they have to either be removed or ultimately, I think they dissolve. But there's a new process out called DMEC. And please do not ask me to pronounce the words that DMEC stands for. Only a Latin doctor could have ever created it. But in the new procedure, the lab technician has a microscope, and that microscope allows him to separate the 4 layers of the cornea into separate layers. And he or she can remove the individual layers. Make it available to the doctor who has the same microscope, who can remove the same layer from your eye and then insert the new one. And it takes 3 stitches. Recovery time is 3 to 4 weeks. So and it's a much faster procedure in the operating room. It's a wonderful process. That microscope is $42,000. And then about another $15,000 worth of training for the lab tech to be prepared to do it. So we are right now doing some fundraising with foundations and whatnot to find that $42,000 so that we can put one in our office, which will make us the only organization other than New York City that has one within about 300 miles. But that will allow us to become state of the art. The organ donation process is such that and I'm going to go back to the thing about telling your family. Because you also need to make sure that you tell your family if you don't want to be an organ donor. Because your next of kin can donate your organs even if you never check that box. So if you don't want to, please come see me and we'll talk a little bit about it. But you know, make sure your family knows it. But whatever it is, make sure you talk to your family and that they know your wishes. And make sure you're talking to the person who most likely will be considered the next of kin. We have had situations where you would think the husband would be the next of kin or the wife, and he or she says, I can't deal with this, you've got to talk to this person over here. And if that person over there doesn't know what you wanted, you got a problem. So make sure that the whole family knows. Our lawyers suggest that you put it in writing somewhere other than with your will, but with a member of your family, so that it can be shared with whoever is making those decisions. Again, pro or con. If I don't want to, I don't care what you guys think, I don't want to. If you do, I've done this, I want you to do this, please respect my wishes. So, any questions, anything else I can answer for you? Yes, sir.
The 14-day shelf life, do you agree with that?
I'm not a clinician. Our surgeons tell us that for the health and viability long-term, 14 days is the outside window.
Okay, so this is not a random number by New Jersey?
No.
Okay, that's what I was thinking.
No, this is a clinical issue
okay, so
by the doctors.
Okay.
But when we hit that 10-day mark, if we don't have a doctor who's saying, hey, I need it in a day and a half or 2 days or whatever, we post it on an international database so that wherever, if there's a doctor out there, oh boy, I could use that. In third world countries, they're not as fussy. So if they have a tissue that's maybe 15 days old, that's going to last 8 or 9 years versus a 10-day-old tissue that might last forever, they'll take it. So, you know, we then put it out to a wider audience, if you will. Priorities are New Jersey first, outside New Jersey second, international third. Yes, ma'am?
Do you have to turn away anybody for an inability to pay?
No. Now, what I will say though is that that comes through the surgeon. So if somebody says, I just can't afford it, if that surgeon doesn't come to me and say, hey, I got somebody who can't afford this, can you help? We don't know about it. It's not like you can call me and say, hey, my doctor says I need a corneal transplant, can you get me a cornea? It doesn't work that way. So there may be some, but we just don't know about them. Yes?
When you posted on the international database, and then you said international doctors use it, like, do they get a discount because you've already passed?
Yes.
What is the question?
The question was, if we post a cornea out on international and a doctor, you know, in Europe or wherever says I need it, do we still charge the same? No. International recovery charges are less just because the whole system is different out there. And at this point, all we're really worried about is, can we help someone see? So.
Unfortunately, we're going to have to
Yeah.
stop it here, but thank you very much. It was
If I can just take 2 more minutes. I was talking to your counterparts, where was I yesterday? Sorry. Allendale. Yesterday. And one of the Rotarians there had a document from a Rotarian in Baltimore. They are doing a corneal disease program in Bangladesh. And they're looking for funding. They need about $500,000 to put this project together. We have passed it on to our international people to see if we can help, but this is the kind of thing that other Rotarians are getting involved with around the country. It's just a really fascinating project that they're putting together. But I do want to thank you for your time, and I'm out of time.